This is the 7th installment in a series of videos where I document the build of an entire Batsuit from Ben Affleck's cancelled 2022 Batman movie. In this portion of the build, I'll be focusing on the utility build, where all the items will be created using 3D printed resin and TPU material. Let's go. What's up you guys, my name is Mark and welcome back to my channel. If you've been enjoying this build series, please smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. All the files can be purchased on the DO3D website, and as always, I'll have a link in the description below. As you guys know, I typically get all my TPU parts from PCBWay, but I wanted to try something new and print the belt using my Bamboo Lab P1S. This is a really large part and would be expensive to get printed from a printing service due to its size. After measuring the belt in Mesh Mixer, I determined that instead of printing it at the 95% scale I've been printing everything else, I need to print the belt at 105% to match my waist size. This is obviously going to be different for everyone, so just make sure you do your due diligence to measure your waist before wasting a bunch of filament. I loaded the belt into Bamboo Studio and had to split it into 4 separate pieces because it wouldn't fit on the build plate. I used Bamboo TPU filament with preloaded settings at 0.12mm layer height and everything printed perfectly. I didn't make any setting adjustments and didn't even need supports due to how the belt pieces were positioned on the plate. The parts have a glossy appearance, which I'm not a very big fan of, but there are minimal layer lines and each piece has great flexibility. If you don't want to go through the trouble of printing at home, you can obviously always use printing services such as PCBWay. Whether you're prototyping electronics or creating custom parts, you can get everything done all in one place. PCBWay has a huge range of materials, super fast turnaround times, and the pricing is really affordable. I've used their 3D printing service in almost every part of this build and the quality is top notch. So if you're working on your next project and need custom PCBs or 3D printed parts, check out PCBWay using the link below. And big thanks to them for supporting the channel. All the gadgets on the belt were printed using my Hey Gears resin printer. These parts can also easily be printed in PLA on an FDM printer, but due to their size and intricate details, it made more sense for me to use resin. I printed each part in standard modeling resin at 0.05mm layer thickness and scaled them to 95% of their original file size to remain consistent with the other pieces of the build. After washing and curing, there were a few prints where I didn't dial in the supports quite right, so they were difficult to remove, leaving some noticeable imperfections. I adjusted the support settings on the next 2 batches of prints and the pieces came out almost flawless. To smooth out the rougher surfaces, I started by using 240 grit sandpaper. I only use this grit size on the defective areas. Once those regions are smooth, the rest of the parts are wet sanded with 600 grit. Resin sands very fast compared to PLA, so thankfully not as much time needs to be spent on this part of post-processing. Also, since it's a lot easier to remove the material, a mechanical sander is not recommended. After sanding, the parts are rinsed under cold water and inspected. Sanding can be repeated if the finish is not up to your standards, but for me, they look fine, so I spray the front and back of each piece with 2 coats of Rust-Oleum's primer. While the primer is drying, I collect the TPU belt sections and work on attaching them together. I utilize an old soldering iron and spare TPU filament to seal the front and back seams between each segment. I don't plan to sand the TPU because it is extremely difficult. I'm okay with the seams remaining visible because the gadgets that will be attached to the belt are going to cover up those sections anyway. The front of the belt is left open so it can easily be taken on and off. Before moving any further, I wanted to have a good idea of how I was going to secure the belt around my waist. I tried inserting the belt buckle, but due to the scaling difference between the 2 parts, it didn't quite fit. My workaround was to cut a notch in the top of the belt on either side of the front opening. This ended up working out great and the buckle slipped nicely into place. As mentioned earlier, I do not like the glossy finish of the TPU and wanted to match the matte finish of the rest of the suit. So I'll be putting a layer of Plasti-Dip over the belt. Plasti-Dip is a versatile rubber-based coating, so it will flex with the TPU and I won't have to worry about it cracking. Plus, it provides a nice matte black finish. I applied 2 coats to the front and back and let it dry for 48 hours. Once the primer on the resin prints are dry, they are wet sanded with 1000 all the way up to 2000 grit sandpaper. Going up to 2000 grit probably isn't necessary since they are already really smooth. I'll also be adding some fine details later which will help mask any imperfections. I decided to sand some of them to 2000, but others I only sanded to 1500 grit. The parts are rinsed under cold water and inspected before painting. If you aren't happy with the finish, just repeat the sanding process again until you've got something you like. All the parts are sprayed front and back with matte black from Rust-Oleum. I wait a full 48 hours before adding 2 coats of matte clear coat. If you add the clear coat too soon, the paint has a high chance of cracking and peeling due to it not being fully cured, so I highly recommend waiting. After painting the parts, I looked at the concept picture again and realized that there are several gray, silver, and gold sections on some of the pieces. So frog tape is used to mask off the sections I'd like to leave black. Also, I should have applied the clear coat after adding the additional colors, but I got ahead of myself. I'll be painting these parts with Rust-Oleum's gray and metallic silver. A few coats are applied and the tape is removed with a few hours of painting to reduce any chance of tape residue sticking to the pieces. After that, they are left to dry for a full 48 hours before moving on to detailing. While some of the parts are drying, gold and silver chrome paint pens are used to color various parts of the belt. Most of these areas are small, so I didn't feel like it was necessary to tape them off and use spray paint. I follow the concept art as closely as I can, but also take some creative liberty because the images are pretty grainy. Once the chrome details are dry, a small paintbrush is used to apply sparing amounts of silver metallic acrylic paint to the edges and crevices of every piece. This boldly defines the contours, creating a sharp contrast that makes the design appear more dimensional and worn in, like real metal. I'm not focusing on making any of these gadgets functional, so I'll be gluing all the pieces together and then permanently attaching them to the TPU belt. Contact adhesive is used to secure all the connections. I organize the parts on the belt to replicate the concept art as closely as I can. I'm going for something more screen accurate even if it sacrifices usability. Most of the individual items clip on the belt, but I still tack them into place using contact adhesive. To secure the belt together so it doesn't slip off while I'm wearing it, I'll be using elastic straps and some Velcro. 2 small pieces of Velcro are glued to the back side of the buckle, and the other halves are glued to the end of 2 short elastic straps. Once dry, the straps are glued to the open end of the belt. This allows the open end to slide nicely into the buckle and connect to the other half. Here's a short video of me wearing the belt. It looks a bit big because there are supposed to be some thigh pieces that get installed under it. I haven't created these parts yet, but once those pieces of the build are done, I'll put the belt back on and show you how it's supposed to sit on my waist. The top part of the mannequin is practically completed, which means I'm going to need to purchase a bottom half for the lower portions of the suit. Once I have that, I'll finally be able to start piecing together the lower armor and see how everything lines up with the belt and chest piece. It's going to be awesome to finally see the full silhouette of the suit taking shape. So stay tuned because the next few videos are where this build is really going to start coming together. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you next time, and stay classy.